Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the Geneva Center for Security Policy for this 35th edition of our Geneva Security Debates. Obviously, it gives me great pleasure to see this packed hall. I mean, that's, when you organize these debates, that's what you're dreaming of. So these Geneva Security Debates, for those that are not familiar with the format, they're a platform for public discussions on pressing security challenges. We always try to bring together outstanding thinkers and practitioners that would offer fresh perspectives and deeper understandings of today's complex global security landscape. Today, we're going to talk about an issue under the title, The International Dimension of Neutrality. So let me offer a few introductory words. In today's deeply unsettled global environment, it is more important than ever to reflect on the meaning, the purpose, the practice of neutrality. Strategic rivalries and hot conflicts have returned. Alliances are shifting, and the multilateral order is under strain, to say the least. We find ourselves in a fragmented international system, one that is no longer unipolar, no longer bipolar, but has turned multipolar. At the same time, remains fluid and unpredictable. It is within this context that the concept of neutrality is being redefined, not only by neutral states, but also by countries that are exploring alternative ways of positioning themselves in the global order. Indeed, many states, including Switzerland, find themselves in a real and a pressing dilemma to preserve their independence and their flexibility while remaining engaged in international affairs. So today's discussion invites us to think beyond the traditional legal definition of neutrality and to consider related approaches such as non-alignment, multi-alignment, and what some refer to as positive neutrality, active neutrality. There are a number of concepts out there. Non-alignment, as shaped during the Cold War, was a refusal to be drawn into great power blocks. Multi-alignment, as practiced today by emerging powers, is a more fluid approach, engaging with various partners across geopolitical divides and choosing cooperation à la carte, rather than formal alignment. Others pursue what they call an active or positive neutrality, remaining outside military alliances while actively contributing to diplomacy, to mediation, to peace building. These variations represent different strategies for navigating a world in which the pressure to take sides is growing, but where many states still seek to preserve their strategic autonomy. They represent different ways for states, particularly small and medium powers, to navigate great power competition. How to remain engaged in global affairs without becoming entangled in them. How to mediate, convene, and lead without aligning militarily or ideologically. Interestingly enough, while neutrality is under pressure here in Europe, it is sparking renewed interest in other parts of the world. For many, neutrality or its other approaches is not about disengagement. It's about engaging on their own terms refusing to be instrumentalized while maximizing agency. Despite pressures, I believe neutrality is not obsolete. Rather, it is being adapted and reshaped to meet the realities of new dynamics and competitions. Neutrality is a strategic balancing act, one that must constantly be reassessed in light of new shifts, new risks, and new responsibilities. Indeed, neutrality does not mean indifference. It definitely doesn't necessarily mean disengagement. Neutral countries are increasingly called upon to act, not to intervene militarily, but to create space for dialogue, uphold international law and humanitarian norms, support peace processes, and ensure that their neutrality serves not only themselves, but the broader international community. Today's discussion is therefore not just about legal status or historical traditions. It is about agency in a multipolar world. It is about how states can protect their interests, safeguard their independence, and contribute to international stability by redefining what it means to be neutral in the 21st century. So perhaps the real question is not whether neutrality still has a place in 2025, but rather how we will use it going forward. What kind of neutrality in all its forms does the world need today? And what kinds of neutrality are possible in the current geopolitical environment? These are some of the themes that I hope we'll explore in today's discussion. And I'm confident that our distinguished panelists will offer invaluable insights. Now, before inviting Ambassador Hajiev for his opening remarks, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our partners, the Permanent Mission of Turkmenistan, to the UN office here in Geneva, the Geneva Center for Neutrality. They both have been instrumental in organizing this Geneva Security Debate, so thank you very much. With this, Ambassador Hajiev, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a distinct honor for me to address you today at this security debate, jointly convened by the Permanent Mission of Turkmenistan, the Geneva Center for Security Policy, and the Geneva Center for Neutrality. We are gathered here to reflect on a subject of enduring relevance and growing importance, the international dimension of neutrality. In an increasingly interconnected and complex world, where cooperation between states assumes new formats and dimensions, neutrality offers a unique framework for fostering mutual trust, promoting peace and maintaining a balanced approach to international engagement. This year, Turkmenistan marks the 30th anniversary of the proclamation and international recognition of its status as permanent neutral state. This milestone not only holds symbolic significance for our country, but also serves as an opportunity to share our experience and vision with the broader international community. For Turkmenistan, neutrality is not a passive stance, but an active and constructive foreign policy orientation, firmly grounded in the principles of mutual respect, good neighborliness, and peaceful cooperation. We view neutrality as a pragmatic and forward-looking platform for inclusive dialogue, the expansion of equitable partnership, and the promotion of sustainable development. It represents our firm commitment to the establishment of a more just, open, and peaceful international order. Over the course of 3 decades, Turkmenistan has consistently demonstrated how a neutral status can contribute to enhanced mutual understanding in our region, serve as a bridge between regions, and provide a reliable foundation for international initiatives in the fields of peace, security, and sustainable cooperation. Today, we are pleased to present you what we refer to as the phenomenon of positive neutrality, a concept that reflects our proactive and principled approach to diplomacy. In this context, we are honored to be accompanied by a respected delegate from Turkmenistan, who was traveled here to share our perspectives, values, and practical experiences. At this point, I have the honor to giving the floor to Mr. Shiri Sharif, the General Director of Center for Strategic Studies. Our country, Mr. Sharif, served in our General Consulate in Afghanistan for 13 years, from 1995 to 2008. In very interesting period of our relations with Afghanistan. And as an ambassador in Uzbekistan, so Ambassador Sharif, the floor is yours, and thank you very much, dear participants, for your participation and active engaging in our today's event. Thank you very much.
Уважаемые гости, дорогие коллеги, благодарю за предоставленное слово. Добрый день, дамы и господа. Прежде всего хочу выразить искреннюю благодарность организаторам Женевскому центру политики безопасности, Женевскому центру нейтралитета и постоянному представительству Туркменистана за приглашение и за созданные отличных условий для проведения сегодняшнего важного мероприятия. Мы собрались здесь, чтобы обсудить тему, которая приобретает все большую актуальность в современном мире – нейтралитет и его роль в международных отношениях. В этом году Туркменистан с гордостью отмечает 30-летие провозглашения и международного признания своего статуса постоянного нейтрального государства, закрепленного резолюцией Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН. Для Туркменистана нейтралитет – это не форма изоляции. Напротив, это активная внешнеполитическая ориентация, направленная на укрепление мира, сотрудничества и взаимного уважения. Мы рассматриваем нейтралитет как платформу для открытого и конструктивного диалога, в том числе и более чувствительных сферах регионального и международного взаимодействия. Примеры тому вклад Туркменистана в мирное урегулирование правового статуса Каспийского моря, поддержка создания Центральноазиатского зоны, свободной от ядерного оружия, и продвижение крупных инфраструктурных инициатив, таких как газопровод ТАПИ, Туркменистан, Афганистан, Пакистан, Индия. Все эти проекты направлены на обеспечение региональной стабильности, устойчивого развития и взаимосвязанности. Нейтралитет дает нам гибкость и доверие, позволяя строить разнообразные партнерства вне рамках блокового мышления и политического давления. Туркменистан также активно участвует в гуманитарной деятельности и посреднических усилиях, руководствуясь принципом нейтралитета. Ярким примером наша помощь афганскому народу во время сильной засухи в конце 90-х годов. В то же время, как многие соседние страны закрыли свои границы из-за санкций, Туркменистан оставил их открытыми и обеспечил доставку гуманитарной помощи. Подобные действия подтверждают, что модель нейтралитета Туркменистана – это не только политический принцип, но и практический инструмент мира, поддержки и стабильности. В 2025 году мы также отмечаем еще одно важное событие – Международный год мира и доверия, провозглашенный ООН по инициативе президента Туркменистана Сердара Бердымухамедова. Это отражает тот факт, что для нас нейтралитет не временная политика, а долгосрочная и ориентированная в будущее национальная стратегия. Дорогие коллеги, мы убеждены, что нейтралитет может и должен служить платформой для консенсуса, устойчивого партнерства и укрепления взаимного уважения и понимания между нациями. Благодарю за внимание.
Now we have all the panelists here with me. My name is Alexandra Matas. I'm the director of the International Security Dialogue Department at the GCSP. And I'm delighted to moderate today's Geneva Security Debate on the international dimensions of neutrality. Before I begin, I would like to remind you that this session is recorded. So in case you don't want to be filmed, please use the seats that are marked for you. And thank you for that. The discussion will be divided into 3 parts today. First, we will start with the conceptualization of the notion of neutrality in today's fragmented and multipolar world. And in the second part, we will examine the international dynamics surrounding neutrality and how states can navigate great power competition that we are facing today. And finally, we'll reflect on the role that neutrality can play in addressing today's global challenges. Before diving into this discussion, let me briefly introduce to you our esteemed speakers today. I will start with Ambassador Cristian Guillermo Fernandez, on my far right. He is the permanent representative of Costa Rica here in Geneva. He has been a career diplomat in the Costa Rican Foreign Service since 1998, and from April 2020 to June 2023 was appointed as Deputy Minister of Multilateral Affairs. During his diplomatic career, he notably worked as Chair Rapporteur of the United Nations Open-Ended Working Group on the Right to Peace. Ambassador Jamal Al-Musharraf is the United Arab Emirates Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations in Geneva and Permanent Representative to the World Trade Organization. His diplomatic career includes positions as Director of the Policy Planning Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York. Ambassador Al-Musharraf has been honored with several distinctions, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs Excellence Award and recognition on the Alumni Wall of Fame of the American University of Sharjah. To my far left, Mr. Jean-Daniel Ruch, who is the president of the Geneva Center for Neutrality. This is the center dedicated to exploring how neutrality can be used as a powerful instrument for conflict resolution and prevention. He is a former Swiss ambassador. During his career, he held senior positions in the OSCE in Vienna and Warsaw, at the UN International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and as a special representative of Switzerland to the Middle East. And last but not least, Ambassador Anupam Ray, who is the permanent representative of India to the Conference on Disarmament. He is a seasoned diplomat with over 3 decades of experience. His career includes senior roles such as head of policy planning in the Ministry of External Affairs, or as Consul General of India in Houston. He has also been a visiting fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C., and a visiting professor at the University of Kentucky. So thank you all very much for being here with us today. So now let us start our discussion. I'm checking the time. Yes, we are pretty good on time. As highlighted in the opening remarks, we are living in the multipolar world, marked by shifting alliances, rising geopolitical tensions. So this prompts us to ask, what does neutrality mean today? The concept is being re-examined, most prominently maybe in Europe, but not only, across various regions in the world. We have heard the terms such as positive neutrality, non-alignment, multi-alignment. They have entered in our vocabulary. So what does this mean to be neutral in 25? And to start with, I would maybe direct my first question to both Ambassador Guilherme Fernandes and Mr. Ruch. The question is neutrality still a relevant and credible concept in today's fragmented world? And is neutrality more of a moral stance, a strategic choice, or simply necessity in this multipolar order? Who would like to go first? Ambassador? Is that okay with you? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you the opportunity to be with all of you in this important discussion. I think that the times we are living is exactly times that we need to have more reflections and more discussion among us. And also to try to deal with the elephant in the rooms. You know, if the multilateralism is under threat, we need to enhance the multilateralism by more multilateralism. And the way to have real multilateralism is when we discuss issues with that real diplomacy, which is mean saying things that they are like this and not to try to go on rounding and rounding. And I think that the neutrality is exactly one of these concepts and issues that we need to discuss because it's a very important in those times. And let me first start saying which is the neutrality for Costa Rica, because the neutrality in Costa Rica was a perpetual, active, and non-armed neutrality, which is mean it's a very strange, and if you talk with all the colleagues from Europe that share the neutrality, to be no arm means it's impossible that you can be neutral. That's why we said first, the perpetual is the fact that is not an administration position, is a part of the foreign policy of Costa Rica. And it's non-armed because we don't have an army, but it's active, means that we're going to take side. And the side is very clear, the side of the UN Charter, the side of the international humanitarian law, and all the international agreements that all the countries by sovereignty power decide to agree. Which is this is the first step for us. I think it's important for you that you can look the position of Costa Rica from the beginning. That's why in this increasing fragmented and multipolar international order of today, the neutrality remains a relevant concept. And not only for in the case of Costa Rica for sure, and I think for other countries also, but it's because in the practice, there is evolving. The neutrality is not something that you put there and stay fixed. No, means that it needs to change. And for Costa Rica, the practical application of these concepts is becoming more and more complex. The evolving nature of the conflicts and the changing dynamics of international relations require a more supple understanding of neutrality and its role in promoting peace, stability, and cooperation in a multipolar world. Which is mean, let me try to be more clear. In one hand, you have the neutrality remains a defining principle, a compass that articulates a preference for peaceful conflict resolution, which is mean this is the basis, a means to safeguard sovereignty, and a signal of impartiality. And in the other hand, you have the very act of upholding international legal norms in a world of full humanitarian crisis, proxy wars, international conflicts, genocide, violations of international humanitarian law, and cyber attacks. And we are forced to take principled positions, thereby eroding the conventional notion of neutrality. You know, it's a very complex situation, which is mean we are neutral, but at the same time, we cannot be quiet. We need to say, because our neutrality is based on the agreed norms around the world. This means that probably we can say that the neutrality can be seen as a moral stance, emphasizing impartiality and refusing to take side in a conflict, like the ICRC. But however, these positions cannot be strongly criticized, because this kind of neutrality can be interpreted as inaction or even tacit support for those who harm others. And particularly for the case of human rights violations, genocides, or aggression. And this is especially is true for the states and perhaps not for the ICRC. That's why what I wanted to answer on this is the neutrality is something that is evolving, but is still a very important concept to apply in the international relations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that's an excellent start, and a lot of interesting ideas on taking sides of international law, and that neutrality doesn't mean that not being neutral in terms of values, but more taking a principled position in terms of violation of international law. Thank you for that. Ambassador, on the Swiss perspective, we hear now also a lot in discussions about the Swiss neutrality, what the concept means today.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for organizing this to the director of the GCSP and his team. This is a great setting. A lot of people. Thank you all for being here. In Switzerland, there are really two dimensions to neutrality. One is the domestic dimension, because for many Swiss people, it's part of the Swiss identity, like the DNA. And back in 2021, you had something like 91% of the Swiss population who believe that neutrality is really an essential part of the Swiss identity. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine and everything that followed, I believe that this proportion has been reduced somewhat, even though still a very large majority of the population is in favor of neutrality. And what kind of neutrality is another issue. We will actually vote about that, as probably all of you know. I'm not sure exactly when, probably in 2026 at one point. This is also one of the reasons why we created this center without taking position to foster the debate. Secondly, neutrality has been seen as part of Swiss security policy. Armed neutrality, which is very different from Costa Rica. Maybe because our neighbors are more bellicose than yours, I don't know. But we see that as part of our security policy, but it cannot be conceived as an unarmed neutrality, because we have seen the examples of the Netherlands or Belgium during the two world wars, which were where the neutrality was violated. So neutrality must be defended And by defending your neutrality, you are also doing something good for the stability in your region, not only because you are predictable, but also because you send a message to your environment, to your strategic environment, that you are serious. But that means that you need to have a credible army also, and this is also part of the debate today in Switzerland. The third aspect, so identity, security policy. The third aspect is that Swiss neutrality is seen as a tool for peace. As a tool for peace in many, many different ways. But maybe the most important one is that a neutral state, by definition, does not threaten its neighbors, even if it's armed. So from that point of view, it's already projecting stability in your environment and projecting predictability and security in your immediate environment. The second dimension is that neutral states may offer their good offices or may be requested to provide their good offices for mediation. It's not necessary. I mean, Turkey is part of NATO, but is has a mediation role between Russia and Ukraine. But it sometimes gives an added value when you are neutral to host such talks, provided, of course, you have the trust of the conflicting parties, because at the end of the day, if you want to be a mediator, you need the trust of both parties. And the third dimension, which has been very much developed by the ambassador, I hope we can come back to that in the latest part of our conversation. I think there is a tremendous role of neutral states today in promoting an international order which is based on the law and not on the force. And well, the ambassador of Costa Rica has mentioned how much there are crises today regarding our multilateral order. It's not only the United Nations, it's the whole international legal order which is put in question. And neutral states, by definition, have an interest to promote an international order which is based on the rule of law and not on the rule of force. I would finish there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruch, and thank you for providing us with this three approaches and three dimensions of neutrality in Switzerland. And thanks also for mentioning already in the third one the potential mediation role and international promotion of international order based on law. We will indeed come back to this discussion still in the third part of our session today. Ambassador Al-Musharraf, I would like to turn to you now. I have a question. The UAE describes its approach as positive neutrality. What does that entail in practice, and how does it differ from traditional forms of neutrality?
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and this very fruitful discussion. The term positive neutrality, I would say, for the UAE has been synonymous with many other concepts in recent years. The main headline it falls under is adapting to the changing situation. The UAE is a country that adapts, whether it's through being in a volatile region, whether it's through COVID-19, whether it's through changes in the sort of economic landscape or threats to the region. There is an aspect of adapting. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to the UAE's vision of neutrality. It's a principled approach. That's how we like to refer to it, as my dear colleague, the ambassador of Costa Rica, pointed out. It's based on the principles of international law and on human rights law. At the same time, it's based on building bridges. It's based on practicing self-restraint in times where things may get very, very tough or to the brink. And it's also based on always promoting the concept of tolerance and coexistence, which many here in the room have been partners with us on these particular concepts. As the UAE, we always try to convey this aspect of tolerance and coexistence, not only in the UAE, but outside of the UAE. I'll touch on this a bit later when it comes to the Abraham Accords and so forth. But an example of adapting when we were non-permanent members on the Security Council, when we entered the Security Council during that year, we had not anticipated that things, we thought it wouldn't be exactly as we planned in terms of a strategy of being. Remember, in the first 1 or 2 months, Russia, Ukraine happened, and by the time we ended our membership, Gaza happened during the end of our term. So it never goes as planned, but that does not mean that we should let go of these principles. These principles remain, they're adaptable, as I mentioned, and they fit whatever situation. And we've really exerted all our diplomatic resources, and our contacts, institutional contacts with countries are very important to maintain this understanding that transcends any changes that go on in the world. It's very important. Changes occur, but the people within institutions, the technical people, the specialists, these types of relationships need to be fostered always in order to maintain this aspect of adapting when it comes to neutrality. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. Very many relevant points. And of course, keywords for me were building bridges and peaceful coexistence. And when you were also mentioning that it never goes how you plan it to be, and you need to adapt, it just reminded me we have been doing some work here at the GCSP now, preparing for the Swiss OSCE chairpersonship next year. But during the last chairmanship of the OSCE in 2014 of Switzerland, there was also preparation for one range of events and one type of priorities, and then the situation was completely different, and we always need to adapt and to be flexible. Thank you for that. Ambassador Ray, India is often described as pursuing a policy of multi-alignment. So what does this mean in practice, and can this approach serve as a viable model for small and medium-sized powers navigating global fragmentation?
Thank you. And thank you, Ambassador Greminger in GCSP, and for inviting me and good friends from Turkmenistan. I heard their remarks with great interest. Now, I understand that the question to me is basically, what does multi-alignment in practice look like? Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. We have a free trade agreement with EFTA, which includes Switzerland. Okay, in Swiss territory here, while we are active participants in the WTO. That is multi-alignment in practice. So that's one. The second example I'd like to give is a corridor that we are cooperating with the UAE in linking Europe with Asia. That's multi-alignment in practice. Okay, that includes countries with whom we have different kinds of interests. Now, for everyone's, we all have interests. I heard with great interest what the Costa Rican ambassador said about not having an army. Now, what does life look for an Indian? I represent India. We are today one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. We have a space program. We have one of the world's largest digital economies. We have climate stress. We have livelihood stress. Although we have succeeded in pulling large numbers of people out of poverty, but there are still people who live in poverty. We have an extremely progressive social agenda. One of our key priorities is building a social security system at home. Now, why we live in a tough neighborhood, as you know. Most of our neighbors, or many of our neighbors, have at some point or the other in the recent past been on the Security Council agenda as well as on the IMF agenda. Okay, so that is in this we have day-to-day concerns about Indians. Income, whether the stock market is up or down, what is the exchange rate, what is the interest rate. All of these are linked, and when you try to work your way through these interests, what you see at a very practical level is that we live in a world of multiple fragmentations. Okay, the fragmentation is not one clean break. There are multiple firewalls. There's an internet firewall, there's an economic decoupling, there are security interests that differ. In this, we have different levels of capacity. India, as I told you, has, for example, we have high, say, levels of livelihood stress, or tackling poverty is an ongoing challenge in India. We've had great successes, but it remains a challenge. At the same time, we are working on one of the world's most advanced space programs. So we are a country which has capacities and interests that are at different levels of development. In this, the multilateral system itself is a relatively new development in history. And when as an Indian, I look at the multilateral system, I mean, I've seen the Cold War, I've seen globalization, I've seen a unipolar world, I've seen the promotion of financialization, I've seen the financial crisis, I've seen various versions of the guns and butter argument. Okay, so times change, interests change. The content of globalization discussed in Geneva in the 1930s, whether it is freeing trade on goods or security, is very different from what is being discussed today when we are discussing human rights, climate change, cooperation in high-tech areas. These didn't exist at that point of time. So you have to create a framework that fits into these realities. And we have these agreements. Today we have multi-stakeholder arrangements. We have coalitions of the willing. We have like-minded groups coming up on various subjects. So let me give you some examples. We have a space program in which we work with countries across the political spectrum. We want to launch a human spaceflight program within the next year or two. We have our technology comes from, has roots or is our own, but we took help from one group or one country at a particular time. Now we are working with another country. On climate change, we have positions which may be fairly different from Switzerland's, but that doesn't stop us from having a free trade area. That's multi-alignment in practice. On reserve currency, the Swiss franc is one of the strongest currencies in the world. Now, where does that put, say, for us as a member of BRICS? Okay, I would say that the future, the multi-alignment future, the G20 has many issues which are take on a little bit from this agenda, a little bit from that agenda. I would say that a multilateral arrangement of the future is, say, the AI summits which are taking place, which India will chair next after UK and France. There are, in an internet fragmented world, in a digitally fragmented world, how do we decide whom do we align with? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. Very, very rich presentation with a lot of concrete examples, and I really appreciate this. Introducing a new term. We talk about fragmented world, multipolar world, polarized world, but then the multiple fragmentations, fragmented world. I think that's a very good term to describe where we are living in. And thank you for explaining to us how we can cope with it, how you're coping with it through multi-alignment policy. So, colleagues, let's now move to the second part of the discussion. We will think here how to navigate those external pressures, and I think the Ambassador's raised presentation was a great bridge to this part. We want to ask ourselves what kind of neutrality are possible in the current geopolitical environment, and I would like this time to start with you, Ambassador Al-Musharraf. How do neutral or non-aligned countries maintain autonomy in foreign policy when faced with mounting pressure from global powers?
A very interesting question, because it's sort of the answer will be a continuation of my previous answer. And it's very important to build strategic ties with countries. Irrespective of the size of the country, whether it's a large or small or medium-sized country. For us as the UAE, we embark on partnerships, whether they're solely or mostly based on economics or food security. When it comes to the relationship with the bigger countries, again, I'll draw on our experience in the Security Council. We went in the Security Council having a strategic relationship with every P5 country, which means that these relationships were the type that were in various fields. And through that relationship we have with each and every P5 country, we were able to, again, build bridges on various issues within the Security Council, on humanitarian access, on sort of between Russia and Ukraine when it comes to prisoner exchange. Another example outside of the Security Council is when we commenced ties with Israel through the Abraham Accords. And maybe at first many didn't understand it. I was part of the process of explaining to different audiences what the impetus was behind the Abraham Accords. And again, the impetus was to not have a policy of an empty seat. Empty seat does not equal neutrality. Empty seat just means that you can't be there to be a voice of reason when there needs to be an extra voice of reason for such an important cause to the world, such as the Palestinian cause. And that bore fruit after years when we've seen the recent unfortunate events in Gaza. But had we not had a relationship with Israel, we wouldn't have been able to allow our aid to reach the Palestinians. And again, over 40% of the aid is from the United Arab Emirates. And so these things at first need time to be cultivated, to be understood, but they pay off eventually, even though such bold steps at the beginning may seem, people won't have the full understanding of them, but the impetus behind it is that in times of need, in times of war, in times of crisis, we're able to step in, even if it's 2%, 3%. Every percentage counts when it comes to solving a crisis, to solving a humanitarian issue, to resolving a conflict. So that's sort of our vision behind that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Empty seat doesn't equal neutrality. I think a very strong message, and also the lesson to build strategic ties that can be used in the situation of conflict. That's I think also an excellent point. Thank you very much for that. Ambassador Ruch, what gives a neutral state credibility today? You spoke about how to maintain the credibility today. How do you protect and sustain that trust in this polarized international landscape?
I like to use the metaphor of a three-story building. Neutrality is like a three-story building. The basement is the law of neutrality. We should not forget that there is something called the Hague Convention on Neutrality from 1907. Many people say it is outdated. I tend not to agree necessarily. There are still basic principles of a neutral state contained in this convention remains very valid today, which is a neutral state does not feed the war. In other words, you are not supposed to give any military advantage to any of the warring parties, which has been translated by Switzerland and other states today as we do not deliver weapons to countries who are involved in conflict situations. So that's the basic law of neutrality. Then there is something else where you have much more flexibility, which is a policy of neutrality. Now, the policy of neutrality is very much defined by your state, by the government of the state. And this is where it requires subtlety, agility, trust, as the Emirates have managed to do extremely well. We've just heard that. So as to maintain your credibility and the trust of all the parties, at war, because that will impact the third story, which is a perception of neutrality. You can be useful as a neutral state only if you are perceived neutral. And it's not because you have in your constitution, well, we don't even have that in our constitution, or let's say in your foreign policy framework, we are a permanently neutral state, that people will perceive you as a neutral state depending on the decisions which are being taken by the governments. So I think at the end of the day, to be useful as an international actor trying to promote peace and mediation, good offices, the second stage, the policies of the government, the decisions of the government, the way those decisions are being taken are definitely of paramount importance because they will determine how much you can be useful as a vector of stability. Now, we had a good case in Switzerland this year, I must say, and these were the talks, the trade talks between China and the United States, which shows that at least we enjoy the trust of these parts of the American and Chinese government. Switzerland was less successful on hosting other types of talks, unfortunately, but these things can be reversed in the future. There's one more thing I would like to add. Very often we are told, oh, you should not criticize this or that country involved in a war because you are in breach of neutrality. And typically, yesterday I gave an interview with the Swiss-German television, and they were asking, yeah, but if we criticize Israel for violating international humanitarian law or for committing war crimes, then we are losing our neutrality. I think it's not the case. I think you can really very much be neutral, but at the same time be very consistent on criticizing the violations of international law, including, of course, war crimes or crimes against humanity, and denouncing them. The thing here is to be consistent and predictable. And to maintain, despite the criticism, there is something called tough love in English. I like this expression very much. I think the Israelis sometimes they need a bit of tough love also.
Thank you very much for this. I think your last point resonates very well with what Ambassador Guilherme Fernandes was saying also about respect of international law, and criticizing violation of international law doesn't take away your neutral status. And I think also congratulations to Switzerland for facilitating this US-China discussions. We hear that there is a very strong perception, for at least in China. I have been there twice in the last few months, of Switzerland as a neutral country. So the perceptions really matter. Ambassador Guilherme Fernandes, my next question is to you. Is neutrality simply a defensive posture, or can it be leveraged for global influence? I think we already heard some voices in favor for this. And can neutrality be a source of soft power in the current global order?
Thank you. And what I like of this kind of gatherings and conversations is at the beginning with Jean-Daniel, we were one on this side and the other, because the Swiss neutrality is completely different from the Costa Rican one. But the basement is exactly the same, looking at your analogy, which is with the international law, not be a threat for anybody, and also to don't give weapons to others, which is it's exactly the same positions. But as you said, everything depends on the first floor or the second floor, and depending. But thank you for your question. For Costa Rica, the reality is that our neutrality is more a strategic and a necessity. It's a strategic approach. Having said that we are an unarmed country, for sure, this is not a product of exportation. As Costa Ricans, when we say we are a country with an army, we are not asking others to do the same, because it's a reality. It's a completely different situation. There was a very huge war during the 70s and 80s in Central America. We succeed to avoid to be involved in that, and probably our neutrality came at this moment, when we have the US and Ronald Reagan putting us a lot of pressure to engage in a war against the Sandinistas regime. In 1979, when he was there. And then the way that Costa Rica decided to say, no, we don't want to be involved on that. We don't want that the US wanted to use our territory to invade Nicaragua and things like that. We say that's why we say no. We are neutral, and we declare this neutral, active, and non-armed neutrality, which is part of the history, but as also like with Mr. Roch said, is part of the DNA of Costa Rica, as the neutrality of Switzerland is part of the DNA. Which is when I say that it's a strategic choice and a necessity, is because the neutrality can be that, and a strategic tool to avoid entanglements in conflicts, to maintain this flexibility that we are talking about in our foreign policy, to be with one side or the other, and not to be engaged in those very difficult times that we have more and more pressures to take side. And more and more, the small countries like ours that depends on the international trade. Costa Rica doesn't produce oil. That we don't, we are not a country that has his own resources of extraction, which is it means a lot for us. And as the EU, they said also, we wanted to be mediators. We want to be bridge builders, and for sure, there is a lot of advantages of the neutrality. First, you have the diplomatic credibility, as was mentioned before. You have a normative authority, in the sense that if you are neutral, you are the people listen to you. This is the case if you can. Our foreign service is 197 diplomats. 400 people is all the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Costa Rica, but we are very active in the UN and here in Geneva, and you cannot imagine that we are only 400 people. And when I say 400 people, is with the drivers and the secretary and the guy who is cleaning the ministry, which is amazing how much noise we made being so small. And this is part of this normative authority. Also, economic stability, that's for sure, is also good for business to know that you are neutral, you are not taking part, and also the fact that we can have very strong positions in humanitarian crisis. I think that this is also give us a lot of possibilities and name. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and important that you underline your message for more of a strategic choice than a necessity in approach to neutrality for Costa Rica. Ambassador Ray, well, you have already introduced a lot of elements, actually, what I wanted to ask you for the second question. Maybe I will ask you more precisely. How does India manage to balance in this very difficult context of the issues like the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the strategic tariffs, defense cooperation with multiple powers? How basically the multi-alignment strategy helps with it?
Well, thank you very much. In my understanding, how you balance realism with moral values, or a normative approach, or what you call a normative approach, is one of the most difficult questions in international relations. Why in international relations? In everything, in every part of human life. And even more difficult than that is the calculation of interests. What exactly are your interests? We wouldn't have a profession of diplomacy, and I wouldn't be sitting here in the very pleasant, city of Geneva if this was easy to calculate. So this is how you take sides. What are the sides? They differ in our view from time to time. We've been around 5,000 years. Okay, Hinduism and Buddhism both come from India. And these questions of how you deal with a realistic approach or a normative approach have many solutions. I believe that Neutrality, it's my humble opinion, is one such attempt to reconcile these two differing pulls. The current international system that you see, with the combination of the Security Council and the General Assembly, is another is also an effort to do this. The creation of international law is itself a process of finding balance between the two. Okay, a decision of the Security Council has the force of international law. How do you decide on the basis? How is the Security Council constituted? Is there anything normative in that? So, which international law are you upholding, or which? So, what are you upholding there? So, these are not. My point is that these are complicated questions in which the answers vary from time to time. For us in India, we draw a distinction between alignment and alliances. Okay, for us, autonomy is important. When we try to calculate what our interests, our autonomous interests are, we find that there is not how would I explain that? That there are multiple balances. There's not a single balance of power. Okay, the Security Council, but there are other. This was also a question that was asked of my minister, Dr. Jaishankar, when he at an event chaired by the GCSP, and he gave a very good answer. And I would recommend that everyone have a look at that answer. There are we have problems in choosing. We do our best. There are certain principles that we follow. There are, what is good is good. We all know what is good. It is not sort of determined by ideological. There's nothing ideological about peace. Okay, you live in peace. That's what it is. Whether you arrive by that peace through a realistic process or a normative process, I think we should try to arrive at peace. We all know when we are economically better off. Okay, we all know when there is justice. So we try to find our way through these dilemmas on the basis of our philosophical tradition. On the basis of our long experience as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I suggest now that we move to the third part, and I'm aware of time. We have 25 minutes left. I still have questions for our panelists, but I would like also to leave at least a little bit of time for the questions from the audience. So if I may ask you to be concise in answering this, which I hope you will be, because we will be discussing now and we'll try to explore the opportunities that neutrality can offer us in the current international system. Ambassador Guilherme Fernandes, a concrete question: is there a way to uphold principles and international law without taking sides today?
Thank you. And I'm very, very short because I speak too much. First of all, there is something that I must say. Small is beautiful. In what sense? It's completely different, the reality of India, than the reality of Costa Rica. And this is something that we need to have very clear. We cannot talk about neutrality in the same situation as India, as the US, as UK, or as Costa Rica. It's completely different, and this is something that must be very clear since the beginning when we build the basement. Which is the recipe is not exactly the same for everybody, but for sure I think that the neutrality is still being a concept and a very good tool for the international community, for small countries, because you can resist on the pressure of the big ones now that we are moving from the rule of law to the rule of power. and also which is the future. I think that we need to look at a hybrid neutrality, something that we were discussing, taking some of the experiences of Switzerland, some experience of Costa Rica, some experiences of Emirates, some experience of India, of those countries, and to try to build a hybrid neutrality concept of neutrality, which is can ensure us the sovereignty and the protection of values. And when I say values, I want to refer not at this big, but at the principles of the international law, putting mainly the international humanitarian law and the Charter of the United Nations. It has been very short, no?
And I thank you for this. Very short, but very also, rich and insightful and suggesting concrete ideas. So thank you for that very much. Ambassador Al-Mushara, to you, you already mentioned that today we have some states that are not formally neutral, but they act as mediators. So we all know the case of Turkey in case of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So do we really need the status of neutral status to promote stability and dialogue in polarized world? And how do you see the role of small and medium powers?
Thank you very much. In terms of, again, I've been pondering throughout this conversation what the topic of neutrality or concept of neutrality adds, and what I think it does, it adds on to the weight of small and medium countries. We always say, and we're always described as punching above our weight in the UAE. And again, it's because there's certain topics that are not purely political. There's a lot of departure from the pure politics and how we conduct our relations with other countries such as India on tech. I mean, we've partnered with Israel and the US, for example. So the topics of cooperation have increasingly become more and more technical, more and more based on economics. We have over 10 CEPAs with countries signed or in the process as well. And if you see the range of countries, they're not all big countries, they're not all superpowers. They're not, so that variation is because we all have similar interests somehow. They don't have to be all the same. There's some low-hanging fruits in terms of how you can see eye to eye with countries and what you can cooperate on. Every country has something to bring to the table. We believe in that. And we believe that progress is mutual. So in these partnerships, when we see eye to eye and we discuss what we see eye to eye on, it really takes away from that taking sides on certain issues, because we're never going to see eye to eye 100% with each other, any country with another country. It's just not possible, but that doesn't mean that mutual progress is not possible. So again, the topics of focus are becoming, I know everything eventually gets tied into politics, but again, the more technical, the more strategic, forward-looking, again, there's a vision to the future, again, that is very important, that our discussions have a long-term benefit for our countries and so forth. So again, that I'm just looking at the bright side of it, and again, I see it as an added weight to medium and small-sized countries.
Well, thank you very much for really bringing this optimism, because now when we are discussing multipolarity, it's mostly in a very negative term somehow, but probably that is something that is positive about it, when we have all the countries sitting at the table and have their voice in the discussions and promoting their interests. Thank you very much for this. Ambassador Ray, to you again. We discussed a lot on this shift from non-alignment to multi-alignment. But what does this? How does this evolution shape India's role in international system?
Thank you. This was almost identical to the question that my minister, Dr. Jaishankar, was asked, and he again gave a very good answer. But broadly, what I will tell you is that non-alignment was a construct of a particular situation, which it represents both a principle and an interest. The principle of non-alignment remains intact. Non-alignment is not contradictory to multi-alignment. We are members of the non-aligned movement. We are also members of the G77. I would say we are victims of climate injustice, in which we have a large number of countries in which we are. We are very proud of our association, for instance, continuing on this trend with the UAE, with the United States, and with Israel on something called I2U2. We have concerns. We are on food security, in which we ally with many members of the non-aligned movement and in Global South. During COVID-19, we made vaccines which were built on cooperation with the production using IPR coming from the United States and UK, and distributed it in the Global South. Okay, that is both multi-alignment and non-alignment in practice, in my view. I think those would be my thoughts. Thank you.
Those are excellent examples, and thanks for repeating once again those answers. I think that's important for us to hear that. Jean-Daniel, you're currently president of Geneva Center for Neutrality, and we heard you mentioning the concept of coalition of neutral states. So do you think it could contribute to de-escalation and mediation in today's conflicts? And what would be the purpose and added value of such a concept?
Well, first, I will try to be super short. First, are there needs, common threats, common risks? Arms control, artificial intelligence, climate change, migrations, food security, many have been mentioned. Second, so the answer is yes. Second, can we entrust the great powers to solve this instead of us in their bilateral relations? The answer is obviously no. And then the conclusion is that strong partnerships, multidimensional, they don't need to be always the same, depending on the comparative advantage, the soft power you have in a specific issue. I think this is happening already. Maybe that can be encouraged and made more systematic. So I think that's the purpose of it. Now, there is a great interest for neutrality in the world, because the role of the civil society should not be too much underestimated either. Last year, there was in Bogota, the International Congress on Neutrality with 80 organizations from the whole world. From all continents were represented. I hear they are going to do a second congress of that sort, civil society organizations, with the support of the government and parliament of Colombia. Next year, somewhere in Europe, not sure where. You would think, oh, Geneva is the place, not sure. And in the meantime, we are trying to work with them to prepare the Congress of next year with a small meeting here later this month. But this shows that among the population of the world, many people believe, I don't want to align myself with this power or that power. I, as an individual, believe in that we should be autonomous and we should have our own voice to drive some of the major issues in the world of today. And let's trust the citizens also from time to time.
Thank you very much. And that's, again, I think we built a lot of ties here on this panel, because I think that resonates a lot what Ambassador Al-Mushara was telling about the role and bringing together the small and medium powers when on some issues of common challenges we can't rely on great powers very often in this current polarized environment. Thank you very much for your contributions. I would like now to open the floor to the audience for your questions. We still have 13 minutes. Excellent. So I would like to ask you to raise your hand that I can see who is asking the question, and also please briefly introduce yourself and be concise, because don't comment but ask the question, and if you would also like to mention to whom you are directing a question. I have a question here from the lady. You can speak without microphone. We have microphones actually here.
I have a question both to India and UAE, and thank you, Ambassador Ruch, for mentioning the importance of civil society. Because in the end, you know, it's people that make up countries. But I look at India. India is a very good example. You're a member, as you said, of G77. You're a member of G20. You're a member of SCO. You're a member of so many organizations. Same with UAE. You're a member of Arab League. You're a member of G77. You're a member of OPEC. So, but both countries, you do very well with dealing both with the three big, you know, sort of soft powers, India, Russia, China, and you both both countries manage to find an equilibrium there, and it's accepted generally by the global community. How important for being able to straddle that world so well is economic affluence, because you're both quite affluent countries. And if you're a really poor country, if you're Chad, or even if you're Egypt, it's harder. If you're poorer, it's harder because you have other dependencies. You have at least, you have some economic independence. How important is that? As an economist, I must ask you that. How important is that economic component?
Thank you. I will gather a few questions and come back to you. I will take one here and then come back to you.
Very short comment and very short question. First of all, Hernandez, I have no more excuses now for not delivering, because, as you said, 400 people for whole the globe with janitors, with everybody, unbelievable. And you are not only making noises, not noises at all, I would say. Costa Rica is the most active, dynamic, and principal member of the Human Rights Council, this for sure. And one question for Ambassador Ruch. Nice to see you, nice to meet you. You mentioned about this basement, 3 stories idea. So the biggest, at least for us, members of the OSCE, biggest conflict is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And Switzerland took side, right, from the very beginning. So it's joint sanctions against Russia, I mean financially. So in this regard, with this question you mentioned from the Swiss television, does it contradict or not? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one more question.
Thank you very much. My name is Yuri Muraro. I'm Vice President of the Joint Chamber of Commerce, Switzerland, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, South Caucasus. And Mr. Ambassador of Costa Rica, you said that neutrality is good for business. And Turkmenistan is one of the countries that we cover at the Joint Chamber of Commerce. And I would like to mention some aspects that was a business and economic aspect influenced by the permanent status of neutrality recognized by the UN of Turkmenistan. So first in transport and logistics. So Turkmenistan plays a role in the north-south transport corridor and east-west transport corridor. And secondly, very briefly, in energy cooperation. So Turkmenistan exports its gas resources to diversified destinations. And most important in our view is the Trans-Caspian gas pipeline project connecting Turkmenbashi to Baku, and then connecting to Turkmenistan gas resources to the South gas corridor. So if anybody from the panel could add something more about the influence of neutrality to the business, some concrete example, this will be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now give it back to the panelists and then we'll take more questions. Maybe, would you like to start?
Yes,
With or without?
yeah, without, okay, yes, the worst accusation a state can face is the accusation of double standards. On the other hand, the former High Representative of the European Union, Mr. Borrell, said shortly before leaving his job, most of my job, my daily job was to manage double standards. So definitely the way our government, and I'm not representing my government, the Swiss government. So definitely there was a shift in the position of Switzerland in February 22 compared to what happened before that led them to take sanctions. And then this is the second floor. And then the third floor is that the Russians said, you are not neutral anymore. So obviously the decisions taken at the second floor had a direct impact on the third floor. So probably the decision was either poorly communicated, or maybe it was a bad decision, or maybe they should have done things differently. But what is clear is that it had an impact on the perception of neutrality. Now, a consistent approach, if you look at both conflicts, there are more conflicts in the world. We should not focus only on those two. But obviously, they are very much in our mind because they are very much in the media. So a consistent approach would have been in both cases, to fight for respect of international humanitarian law, to fight for international justice in both cases, and thirdly, to cut any sort of military support to any of the warring parties in any of the two conflicts. Now you'll tell me in the Russia-Ukraine conflict we don't provide any military assistance to any of the parties. In Israel, we sold dual-use goods for about 16 million in 2024. In 2025, the first quarter was almost 7 million dual-use goods. Then the National Bank of Switzerland holds a lot of shares of Elbit, which is one of the main weapon industry of Israel, and there is no regulation whatsoever prohibiting any Swiss financial institution to invest in the military companies of Israel, which may be responsible for war crimes. So in my view, if we would have liked to be consistent in the sense, and legally consistent, so as not to give any sort of military advantage to one of the parties in the Middle East, we should take measures to stop this investment and these financial flows into the military industry of Israel. That would be, in my view, consistent with international law, with our obligations as a neutral state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ray, would you like to comment on the question and maybe on the economic connectivity?
Thank you for your question, Madam. And I'm not an economist. So I used to be a physician before I joined the Foreign Service. So, I don't know if I can give you an adequate answer to a very good question. But the first point I'd make is that the UAE is affluent, not India. The UAE is a generous partner.
GDP, you have a reasonable GDP.
We are a large country and we are a large economy, but we have economic challenges. So, and the second point is, I can't talk about other countries. It's not correct for me as a serving ambassador to talk about what is the reality of other countries. But at a more fundamental level, I think your question is about how growing economic weight affects your political judgments or or how you respond or how you react to your changing position in the world. And I would say one thing, that the primary responsibility of our government is to ensure a good life for its citizens. We don't have the answers about all the answers or about how we get to a good life. But I think basically we understand that prosperity must come from the ingenuity and the industriousness of its people and businesses, civil society, that a diverse economy with opportunity, where everyone has a right to opportunity. Now, this is how we look at it internally. My job, or our job as diplomats, is to convert this into, I think, a term called the level playing field in international relations, which has never existed in economic terms. So there has never been, in my understanding, an economic organization which has actively, the example of the Doha Development Round, for instance, stuck since the Uruguay round. So this is or the question of climate injustice that I keep coming back to. If I could use my economic weight, I would use it to level the playing field.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr.
If I may, just answer your question, economic affluence or resource affluence would not be possible or successful without the leadership of our president and our leaders. And I'm not an economist myself, I'm a diplomat, but at the moment, a large chunk of our foreign policy, 50% or more, our foreign policy is focused on economics. So there is no conversation we have with our partner countries or counterparts that does not have an economic component, because again, this aspect of mutual benefit, of long-term benefit is very important for us, that whatever projects we embark on, whatever deals are signed or agreements are not one-offs, and they transcend, again, any disruptions in the international system. So when we focus on the economic part, we focus on how it's done in a way that really transcends any changes and is adaptable. Again, this aspect of adapting is important for us. So again, it is due to the wise management and leadership of this very topic.
Thank you, and I want to answer to you, because as Costa Rica is a very strange country and a very different case. I can tell you that Costa Rica has diplomatic relations with Russia, with an ambassador based in San Jose. We have an ambassador based in Moscow. We vote against all the aggressions made by Russia in the GA, everywhere in the Human Rights Council. We have relations with China, and our best our exports are to the US and the EU. And we are not a rich country. The hypothesis that you must be rich to be neutral and to have positions based on values and principles of the international law, I don't think is right.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I don't need it anymore. Yes, excellent. Thank you. Well, I think it's perfect timing. We have 2:00 exactly, and I'm afraid now we have to conclude this event. On behalf of GCSP, I would like to thank our panelists for this very, very rich discussion, for some fresh ideas, terminology, and some interconnections that we could observe with your positions. I think that you gave us a lot of food for thought. I would like to thank you all for your presence, for your engagement. A special thanks once again to our partners, the Geneva Center for Neutrality, and the permanent mission of Turkmenistan, whose support was instrumental. I also extend my gratitude to my GCSP colleagues, including Carla Lodian, Florian Gole, Mareva Rodi, and Vasiliki Kaidanatsi, without whom this event will not have been possible. That we warmly invite you to join us for the next Geneva Security Debate on the 18th of June, which will explore the evolving dynamics in the Arctic. We look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you very much, and one more round of applause.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Fantastic.